What's up, everyone? So we got Mr. Ashton Pienaar here. Me and Ashton met a few years ago, actually more than a few years ago. It was before the pandemic, I believe, on a little old show called Below Deck. And I was the guest. He was the star. He's still a star for more ways than one. But I'm super excited to have you a part of the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jake. I was
Yes,
excited
sir.
when you reached out. Yeah, like you said, it's been a long time, but
Yeah.
um, been following you and your messaging and stuff, and it's been cool to watch. So I'm happy to chat.
Sweet. Yeah, I think you and me are very similar on a lot of fronts. You're really authentic in your approach to how you brand yourself and how you put yourself out to the public. And I think the below deck thing is one thing. That is a piece, a small piece of who you are. And clearly it's given you a platform, which is a beautiful thing. But I think fundamentally, you're much deeper than that, just the show, below deck. On the surface, people look at it. I know people love the show. When I originally went on the show, I had watched one episode prior to. My wife was a huge fan, and all the girls that went on the show was a huge fan, but I had never watched the show, which it seems like that's a thing, right? Like it seems like a lot more females than males like the show, but I could be wrong. So
I agree. Whenever I meet somebody on the streets and they recognize me, it's normally the male or the husband or the boyfriend that recognizes me, and then what they say is, "Oh, my wife or my girlfriend makes me watch the show." Yet they're the one that recognizes me. I was like, "Oh, I get that a lot."
well, you're definitely recognizable, especially with your shirt off. And in this case, your shirt is on, which is so funny
Yeah.
because I feel like for me, I was in the fitness industry for 17 years, owned gyms for 12 of those years, three separate gyms. And in that course, I spent a lot of time with my shirt off. And so when my shirt is on, now in my profession as a real estate broker, entrepreneur, I still have people on Instagram, on social media that'll be like, "Why is your shirt on, man?" I'm like, it's good. It's good to have your shirt on.
It is.
So,
Oh,
yeah,
it's like you said earlier. There's different depths and levels to people
yeah,
that go just beyond what people see on the surface, and it's the exact same thing with just having your shirt off. Like, yes, you're in the fitness industry, and you want to build trust, and people want to see that you know what you're doing, and you are that sort of idol that they can sort of like strive to be like. But yeah, I mean, I'm also a person with my clothes on, and there's other aspects to me too, right?
hmm, absolutely. So one of the things I wanted to dive in is your book. So you published a book and it was launched this last year. So tell me about that. How's it been?
It's been good. The whole process was therapeutic in its own. And over the last sort of 5 years, specifically from the TV show, I was forced in a good way to like really get introspective and work on things that I wasn't happy with in terms of just my behavior and stuff that I saw on the show. And it was a really interesting process to go through because writing the book, you go back to childhood and your earliest memories because you want to share with people sort of who you are, where you've come from, what's made this person that they see today. But I didn't realize doing that as like a 33, 34-year-old male, looking back at like your 7 or 8-year-old self. So much has happened between now and then. And when you revisit that, it's therapy because you go back and you're like, oh my goodness, like
Yeah.
I didn't realize how things that happened to me at that age have shaped who I am today and how it's like conditioned me to be a certain way. And in doing that, I was going through therapy during writing the book because a lot of writing the book just brought so much to the surface that I needed help to sort of integrate and make sense of. And one of the biggest things that we did is sort of went through this process of like reparenting yourself. I had very, very young parents. My mom was 17, my dad was 18 when they had
Wow.
me. So, if I look back at when I was 17 and 18, if I had a kid like at that age, I would not be the perfect role model in terms of parents, although they did so flippin' well in the way that they brought me up. It really just affects the way somebody turns out.
Yeah.
Um, and then you sort of like go back and you like I said, you don't think of these things as being hugely impactful. But in today's time, and you look back, and because you're a different person now, and you've got this experience as an adult, you look back and you're like, damn, that makes a lot of sense. And now when you bring awareness to like your younger self and the things that you didn't get or the things that affected you, now you've got to sort of do the work to like reparent yourself and give yourself those things to make yourself feel whole in today's time. I know that's kind of like a lot, but that was the whole process of like writing this book. So um, my first objective in writing the book was, like you started off, people saw this version of me on the TV show. But it's such a surface level version of me because you only see snippets of me during the show. And once the producers pick their storyline and they pick like
Yeah.
their whole reel for the seasons, there's no ways that they can include every little single thing that happens.
No.
And the public really does just get a snippet of who you are and what you're about. And the whole point about this book was to share little bit more insight into who I am, where I've come from, who is Ashton on a deeper level, but more so the personal development journey that happened as a result of the TV show. In many ways, it was me taking responsibility for doing more inner work again off the back of me not being happy with behaviors that I saw on the show, but also sharing a lot of the things that I learned throughout that period with other people, because there's just so much value in bringing awareness to the things that shape our character and who we are that are out of our control. And sharing this book and sharing my experience is sort of just giving some people some sort of direction and some sort of tools, but also just allowing people to know that they're not alone in some of the things that they're struggling with in their life. So yeah, there was a lot of reasons I wanted to write the book, and I'm glad I did. Um, and it's been really well received by everybody.
Hmm.
Everybody's sort of read it, and I've not had any negative feedback that I know of so far. But if anything, it was just hugely beneficial for me personally from like a therapeutic standpoint.
Hmm. How unique to be on a television show and to get a self transformation. I feel like most people that would go on a television show would become more vain, become more conceited, and really in turn maybe not have the same sort of experience that you had. But it seemed like so after the show was over. So I guess something that we should talk about is what was the show for the people who don't know the show Below Deck. What exactly was the premise of the show? And then after you explain that real quick, what was it like to lead the show, and what was it that gave you that sense of transformation? Was it the book, or was it something else? Was it an experience that you had?
Yeah, so Below Deck is a reality TV show that follows the life of yacht crew and
Hmm.
what goes on behind the scenes and basically below deck, which is where the crew of the yacht live and sort of carry out their behind the scenes stuff of creating this above deck experience for its charter guests. And for anybody that has worked on a yacht, they'll understand. And for those that don't, you're living in very tight quarters. It's super long work hours. It's a high pressure environment. And when you couple that with new people, a new boat, um, people getting tired, people getting emotional. Like it's just the perfect recipe for a very dramatic TV show. And I think that's
Hmm.
why the show has done so well.
Yeah,
Um,
millions of followers, right? Millions.
yeah, it's crazy. Like the viewership
Hmm.
on the episodes is crazy. And people started watching it just to like see where people would go, like the scenery of all these great places. But over the years, it's really become about the drama more so than it is about the beautiful places and yachting itself. So that's the TV show. In terms of my transformation, I'm I'm my biggest critic. Like I am the most harsh on myself, and I uphold myself to a very high standard. Going into the TV show, I was kind of like a year or 2 years into my own personal development journey. I had a very good friend of mine that introduced me to the concept of like deep introspection and deep awareness of certain things, and like the power that we have in ourselves to sort of um,
Love that.
control our future and stuff like that. So I felt pretty personally developed going into the show, which is why like I was so gung ho about it. I was like, I've got nothing to hide from the world. I'm comfortable in who I am. Like, let's go on the show. Like it's exciting and why not? First season, the biggest thing of the first season was I almost lost my life. That's when I got pulled into the water. That was a
Yeah,
crazy,
that's crazy.
crazy experience. And a lot of people that know me will know me from that specific incident. Um, and then the second season was just, it was, there was a narrative behind the whole season, of like bullying, misogyny, all these sort of like Me Too type topics that came up. Um, and there were also just times in my personal behavior where I was like, that's not okay. I lost my temper on camera. I was drinking way too much. And as you know, when you drink, it's sort of like it dissolves that barrier between your conscious and subconscious mind. And like all these things that I still hadn't dealt with in my life were sort of coming to the surface. And I was seeing it in my behavior on camera. Um, and post season, there was a lot of controversy around the entire season. There was a lot of hate. There was also a lot of support. With as much hate that comes from things, as much good and love and support come from those
Hate towards
things.
you specifically?
Yeah, completely, completely.
Wow.
People thought that we treated Riley very unfairly because she was a girl, which was like I can see where people would have picked up on stuff like that. But again, it's a TV show, and there's parts of the season that are highlighted and emphasized, and there's parts that weren't. Just on that one topic, I had more fights with Tanner, who was one of the male deck crews, than I did with Riley as a female. But again, once the narrative is chosen, it sort of emphasizes certain things and things are cut out.
Yeah.
Um, but so that's where a lot of the hate came from for that. But then also like my behavior towards females, which had nothing to do with editing and stuff like that, which sort of was a part of my character in my earlier life, which is one of the biggest things I had to sort of work on. Those are the types of things that were just parts of me that I wanted to work on. So there was a lot of hate, from the sort of public eye, and it put me into this sort of state of like, I watched it. I wasn't happy because remember, I hold myself to the highest standard, but then you're
Yeah.
getting all this hate from the public as well. You're also being labeled as things that deep inside is not true about you. But then you've also got to take a step back and be like, well, why is this sort of like sparking this rage in people? Like, what is it in my behavior that is being viewed as this? And it's hard
Mm,
to accept at first. And at
mhm,
first I didn't want to accept it because I was like, I can't see it, I can't understand it.
mhm,
But as you sort of look at things a bit better and you kind of let your guard down a bit, and you let things sink in, you're like, I can see why that would be taken that way. And I can see why that behavior is not great. And that's where the real work can take place. And the more this sort of went on, I was asking myself the hard questions, and I knew that there was just a lot more work that I needed to do deep down. And I was drinking way too much and I was partying too much. And 99% of the time, I would be the life of the party, happy go lucky, nothing would go wrong. But there would be like once or twice a year where I would lose my temper or I would act out or something like negative would happen. And there was sort of like this behavior that came through me that I felt wasn't of me, but it was coming through me, especially
mm.
when I was drunk. And I knew that if I was to really work on that and understand where it was coming from, it had to be in sort of like clear eyes, clear mind, and just really like hone in on how do we fix this sort of stuff. Um, and the first thing I did was I started cleaning up my eating and my training again. Because growing up as a semi-professional sportsman, like that's what kept me disciplined. What what kept me focused, and good things happened in my life. But when you leave school and now you're building a career and you're working on all these other things, those sort of things like slip on the wayside, especially because I don't have to show up to a practice or a game or something that keeps me sort of locked in. So when you leave school and college, you're now in charge of upholding that athletic standard for yourself.
Yeah.
um so it cleaned up my eating, cleaned up my training, and my life just started like falling into place again. Like favorable things were happening. I was waking up feeling better. My relationships with people around me started changing. And then I'd still be drinking on weekends and stuff. But I started suffering from like 3 or 4 day hangovers. And it's probably because of the amount
Whoa.
that I was drinking and like how hard we were partying. And waking up the next day, it just, the the lack of productivity, the brain fog, the just the mental load of like waking up in that state was just so counterproductive to where I was going and what I wanted to work on in my life. And that's when I made the decision. I was like, I got to stop drinking. Like, it's not
Mm,
serving me. I made like total nonsense of the act of drinking. Like, I was spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a night getting smashed, not to remember half the things that I was doing, probably causing some sort of trouble along the way, and then waking up with like a 3 or 4 day hangover. And I was paying
mm,
for this experience. And
mm.
just understanding that made like non-logical sense of drinking. And that's why it was so easy for me to just give it up. Um, but in that whole process of turning my life around and just uncovering all this like value and just the way my life sort of fell into place, I was like, this is what I can help people do. And if anything, like me acting like a hooligan on TV and all of this, and the journey and the growth that has come from it can't be in vain. I was like, this is what I
Mm,
want to help people do for themselves, because the way that I behaved and acted on TV, it was recorded. And
mm.
and I was the one that was made an example of, right? And I'm happy about that because it's added so much value to my life. But there's so many people out there that don't have cameras on them every single day when they go out, or every single day in their behaviors and things. And they don't have the advantage of being able to watch themselves back and be like, hey, this is what I want to change.
Yeah, so it's a
Although there
blessing.
are these signs and symptoms in their life that something does need to change, they don't get that opportunity. So, that's where I kind of found purpose in coaching and helping other people transform their lives, because I've been there and I've done that. And I just know that there's so many people, number one, that are living in a conditions of their upbringing and the things that they were exposed to, but also because of the unhealthy habits that they're making in their lives as coping mechanisms,
Mm.
and not like bringing awareness and knowing how to do the work to get down to the root causes of like what's making them behave in certain ways.
Yeah, I so many questions and so many cool things to take away from that. I think that you can see it in your eyes. I didn't know you as a person prior to Below Deck, and did I really get to know you on the show? Not really, but you can tell when someone's made a shift and a transformation, and you could just see it. It's authentic, it's real, it's genuine. That you were one person and now you're a different person. Not that you've lost the good qualities you had; they've probably only been enhanced. But to see you make that shift, and now the passion that you have that seems to be directed towards helping people, which again, really cool that the show was the catalyst that moved you in that direction. Because I guess in part being on a show for some people like you, rare at best, is a gift. And then for some people, the majority of people, probably a curse. But for you, it seems to have really done the trick, which is crazy. So what was it in your past prior to you being on the show, maybe at a young age, that was a moment in time where you had an experience or a season in life that took you down the path that maybe wasn't the best? Drinking, things like that.
There's a lot, and a lot of it I'm still unpacking, and still trying to make sense of. Um, my unhealthy drinking and partying habits, and it wasn't just drinking; it was substance, drugs, all sorts of things to sort of like make me feel more present in the moment. So before I made the shift to actually working on yachts, I left school, went to college, left college, straight into sort of a career and a job, not really knowing what I wanted to do, but I sort of got stuck in a 9 to 5, and just like lacking real fulfillment and purpose in my life. And that's when you sort of like turn to these coping mechanisms to give you that sense of fulfillment and that freedom,
Mm, mm,
to just be so present in the moment. And that was like at the peak of my partying and stuff. Um, and I think to some extent it's natural in a young person's life. They, finding their way and finding their place in the world and in life. But my personality is like I'm so balls to the wall with anything that I do. So it's like if we're
we're
partying,
similar.
if we're partying, we're partying. Like if we're not, we're
Yeah.
not. It's like everything for me is extremes. And I think again, it's why I've sort of taken the approach that I have to life, is holding myself to that high standard, because I'm just all in or all out. So I think, my drinking and partying. was just me trying to find a sense of purpose, but also just trying to find some happiness in the moment because I knew I wasn't sort of feeling fulfilled and happy in my own life. Um,
Where were
but yeah,
you living at this time?
where?
Yeah, at that time of your life, where were you living?
Oh, I was in Johannesburg in South Africa.
South Africa. Okay.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in South Africa. I traveled a little bit to sort of like Hong Kong and Thailand before then, but never really experienced more of the outside world, which was like a big part of why I eventually left my job there and just got into
Mm,
the world of yachting because it allowed me to travel,
got it.
see the world, do something different. But to go back to the question,
Yeah.
I had very young parents. Um, my earliest memories of my mom and my dad together was my dad smashing the house up because they were having these intense fights.
Mm,
So being exposed to sort of that environment at a very young age, I think did a did a lot to my psyche. Um, and then also just the continuation of divorced parents going back and forth, fighting about money, sort of like fighting about all these things. And if you look at the psychology behind it, when you're a young person, your home environment is your safety, right? So you are when you're young, you your role models and your home environment is what's going to set the foundations for what you refer to or what your psyche is going to refer to as the safe, comfortable environment when you're older. So when you look at a young person's environment and it is filled with all this sort of like fighting, animosity, violence, and all these things, like it really does something to you later on in your life. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And then, also just like cultures that you grow up in. Um, I grew up in a certain culture in South Africa that also conditioned you and your people around you in school at a young age. Like all these things have an effect. Um, but yeah, I think majority of my struggles has to do with my mom and my dad's relationship through my upbringing. And there's so many spin-offs to just that as well. That's like it's really hard to go into each individual thing. I'm also very protective over my mom and my dad, and it's like I'm always stuck in this place where it's like I want to protect them, and I also have so much like gratitude for the fact that they actually had me at a very young age and like pushed through with everything and did the best that they could. But I've also got to be realistic and allow myself the space to be like, well, my experiences as a young kid were not favorable and they have affected me. And it's a big part of therapy that I've sort of been working on because you sort of like gaslight yourself to a certain extent by not validating your experiences or feelings as a young person because you have love and respect for your parents for everything that they did do. And it can be a block because you've
mm.
got to come to like terms with the reality of what the situation was and how it's affected you without the emotional connection of trying to protect your parents because they did the best that they could. um so yeah, I know that's a roundabout way to answer your question. I hope that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does. I think it's a good transition into the type of client that you work with when it comes to coaching. Is that the type of client that you get? People with past trauma and with things that they have to deal with, or is it more of like a business consulting, a fitness consulting, or a little bit of a lot? What does your avatar look like with your client now?
you know to answer your question, no, that's not typically the client that I work
Hmm,
with.
hmm,
Although it's something that I would like to move towards.
hmm,
I'm not a psychology specialist,
hmm,
right? And that's why I wouldn't want to sort of help people with their deep psychological issues. But I can sort of take a person through a process of like bringing their awareness to the things that do need work. And then I do have people in my team that are the psychology specialists that can then take over and do that deep
hmm,
work. Where I'd like to move to is hosting these groups or these retreats where we sort of do that groundwork and bring attention to the places in people's lives that do need change and then sort of like put them in the right direction from there. The types of clients that I've worked with in the past, and if you just think about it logically, I built up a following from below deck. So it's like 75% of my following is female that come from the TV show. And a lot of females struggle with weight loss resistance. Um, so there's a lot of nutrition and training coaching that goes into that. But then if you go a step deeper, if you look at people's relationship with their body and with their food, that also comes from sort of past conditioning as well. So that's where I am able to leverage that experience and understanding of that to help people with their health journey as well.
Yeah.
Because people's outcomes in terms of the way that they look are as a result of their habits, and those habits are a result of the emotions that drive those habits. But those emotions come from their belief system, and that belief system is created from that earlier version of themselves in their life through the things that they saw, they heard, and they experienced. And if you
Yeah.
can help somebody fix those things, then all of a sudden the emotions start aligning, the habits start aligning, and then the outcomes start aligning. A lot of people, and me especially, like I'll set my mind on something because I know I want it, but something inside of me in the journey will just switch off. And that's sort of the subconscious mind from past experiences that are, again, keeping you safe in what your mind perceives as safe and prevents you from achieving those things that you want.
Yeah. Yeah, you might not be a psychologist, but you've lived these experiences which are valid. And so you as someone who is a self-developer or self-reflective, you have the you've changed yourself. And because you have changed, you have the ability to then coach people, then to transform. Not that you could help everyone, because in order for someone to change, they have to identify these things within themselves. Even if you point them out, they have to go, okay, yeah, you're right. And I then want to make a shift and I want to make a change. So I love the idea of the retreats though, and getting people together to not just work on one thing, but maybe multiple tiers or multiple levels to be able to have an end goal game in mind. That is it something that you've already started, or what's the plan there?
I would like to host my first retreat early next year.
Okay.
And I would say later this year, but I've just got a lot of things sort of travel wise that's happening at the end of this year. So I'd love to do
Yeah.
it sooner, but I also want to do it properly. I'm
Mm.
working on building a community as well. So I want to get a lot more people in there so that I can um, give them sort of first option to these retreats. But it definitely is something that I want to focus on. I have a love for travel and I have a love for just like experiencing new experiences, but also just having conversations with people, like we're having
Yeah.
now, sharing as much
Yeah.
of what I've learned to at least allow people to start asking themselves the right questions. But also I want to open up my Rolodex of people that have helped me in my life and give other people access to that.
Yeah.
Um, because I know what it's like to live as a lesser version of myself, but also as less authentic because I'm sort of like covered and made up of the conditioning of my past. And it can keep people trapped and it can keep people um, down. It can prevent people from living their best, most fulfilled life. But they
Mm.
just don't know how. They don't know what questions they should be asking. They don't know where they should be looking. And conversations are just powerful. And if you get people
Mm.
around the right sort of people, the right energy, allow them
Yeah.
to ask the
I
right
agree.
questions. It's so impactful, and I feel like there needs to be more of that, and specifically in the male sort of amongst males, because growing up, part of my problem is that I was always told that big boys don't cry. Like I was never taught how to explore my emotions. If anything, my emotions are always shut down, and I was told like the world doesn't revolve around me, and anything I felt that wasn't seen as right in the moment was like suppressed. But it's a bigger problem as our generation of men and far before, we were not taught that emotion is a good thing to explore. We were not,
Yeah.
my vocabulary around emotions was super stunted because it was never sort of like encouraged. And in my opinion, it hasn't bred these strong men. It's actually bred very weak men. And if you just look at suicide rates and stuff like that, that is the outcome of the way that we were brought up. So it's a much deeper passion of mine to start men's groups as well to sort of get that support at that level. So there's a lot that I want to do. And I'm
Ambitious man.
excited for all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. So have you brought up suicide. Has that something you've ever struggled with in the past? Ever had those thoughts?
Yeah. At the peak of everything that was happening with Below Deck, I for the first time, and it's something I talk about in the book, for the
Mm,
first time I could relate to why people take their lives.
mm,
And for me, that was a big thing because up until that point, I could never relate to someone that took their own life. I was
Yeah.
always like, you know, how bad can things be to get yourself to that point where you just want to really end things? Um, but dealing with all of that and not really knowing or seeing the light outside of
Wow.
everything that I was going through, I got to the point where I was just like, what is it all for? Like, I'm not enjoying this and I hate where I'm at right now. And um, I think the biggest thing was that I also felt like I had done so much work on myself to just have my world returned on its head. And like, I had this voice inside of me that was like, you thought you had done the work, but there's so much to do. And then you sort of like take check in yourself and you're like, well, do I have what it takes to actually fix this? And to like be a better person and do I want to do the work? So yeah, there was a time that I was in a very, very dark place
Wow.
where that was a consideration for me.
Yeah.
Um, and it's weird, like when you go through stuff like that, you also start seeing how many other people struggle with the same thing. And I guess that's where you start wanting to help, right? You start wanting to be able to be there for people, to support on that level. And then you start looking into the stats and you start looking at like, well, damn, I'd always sort of just like put this issue aside because it never affected me. Now that it has, you sort of shine a light on it and you're like, oh my goodness, this is a huge problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's sort of how that sort of drive for that has come about.
So for anyone in the audience that is currently going through a similar circumstance and maybe they have suicidal thoughts or maybe they're just stuck in life and they don't know how to transition and have the same catalyst you had through below deck, like what would you say, what tips could you give them to help them move in the right direction? What would be the first step that you would say, okay, if you want to get out of that, let's take this step in order to get you here? Because I'm sure there's plenty of people that are going to listen to this and you're still a work in progress. I'm a work in progress and we have a lot of ambitions and a lot of things that we want to accomplish. We also have a lot of things that we're still lacking. We're deficited. We're not good at everything, and we have tendencies that bring us down. And so we're still working towards becoming our best selves, but some people aren't even there yet. You know, they're just looking to get the momentum, just to make the choice to move in a new direction. So, what would you say to those people?
I think it starts with first just being able to validate your feelings, right? I think, and it ties into sort of men being conditioned the way that we were, where we would feel something and then we were told we shouldn't feel that way because again, we're strong and we shouldn't feel hurt, we shouldn't feel sadness, we shouldn't feel these things because we've got to show up for everybody around us as that strong male. So I think the first step is to just see your feelings, acknowledge them in a gentle way,
Hmm.
but just validate them to be like, you know what, I am struggling and I am in a bit of a bad place, but it's okay to feel this way. That's the first thing, is just to give yourself that permission, because
Recognition.
where it becomes unbearable is when you're feeling things, but then you're shutting them down inside of you because you've been told you shouldn't feel these things, but they keep coming up. And then you sort of get yourself in this thought loop and the stress loop, and everything just builds up and builds up and builds up, and these feelings get more and more intense. And then you feel like you feel ashamed because you've been told you shouldn't feel this way, but you are, and you're trying to you demonize the feelings that you have. And that's again, like, it just builds and builds this pressure. So you got to come to a point where you got to drop your ego and you got to drop your pride and just be like, okay, I'm struggling and I do need help. And then that's the first step, is just giving those feelings validity. And then the next step is just talking. And
Hmm.
it's something that I go through on a day-to-day basis, and I've got to constantly remind myself of that. Like, I had a conversation with my wife just yesterday. I had something on my heart that was like bugging me, and I was keeping it in. But then I reminded myself, like, hey, just speak to her about it. Show yourself, be vulnerable,
Hmm.
drop the pride, drop the
Hmm.
ego, drop this like front that you feel you've got to put on because you've got to be this societal strong alpha male. Like, that's part of the problem.
Hmm.
And after having the chat with my wife, which was hard for me because again, I'm supposed to be the man. I'm supposed to be the one that has it all figured out. I'm not supposed to struggle. But showing that vulnerability, having that communication, and just talking about it in its own was such a relief for me.
Mm.
So that would be the second thing, is just talking and getting it out and communicating.
I
And
love
if you
it.
don't feel comfortable enough doing that in your circles or with friends or with your wife or whoever it is, like find someone you can talk to. Because just taking the load off of yourself and speaking it to somebody else, there's something just in like that lightens you with that, right? Because my biggest problem is that I would hold on to everything and I'd try and figure everything out on my own. But truth be told, I didn't have all the tools. I didn't have all the things necessary within myself to get myself out of certain situations that I was in. So that would be my advice, is number one, just validating your feelings, just being okay with like, all right, I am struggling and it's okay to struggle.
Mm.
Everybody in life struggles. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have it all figured out. And whether I'm male or
Yeah,
female
I love that.
or gender neutral, it has nothing to do with it. Like everybody is entitled to have negative emotions. And I think this is the other thing, is we live life striving for all the positive emotions and we demonize the negative emotions. We don't want to deal with the negative because it hurts and we've been told it's bad. But it's part of life. You know,
Mm.
all the good feelings are only a percentage of what we can feel as a human being. Like we need to encourage people to embrace hurt, to embrace challenge, to embrace all these other things, because if we sort of are exposed to these things and we're welcoming to them in the sense that we want to understand them and where they're coming from, it's going to be so much easier for us to deal with them than trying to like just avoid them all the time and sweep our feelings and emotions under the carpet because we've been told that these negative feelings are bad.
Yeah. No, I think that's practical. I think that's easy, and I love how you seem systematic in the way that you think, where you start from within and say to yourself like, "Hey, I'm having these feelings," and you need to process those feelings, and then you need to talk. You need to expose those feelings to other people. And I think you're right. People bottle up these thoughts they may have, and on the surface, they might seem negative, but it's the path to their enlightenment. Yet at the same time, over time, by keeping those thoughts to themselves, it becomes negative, and its consequences are sometimes dire, not good. So, yeah. So to transition a little bit, where are you at right now? What's life like, and what are you doing? You're married. That's cool.
Yeah, I got married, I think it's now 3 years ago.
Okay.
I should probably know. But it feels very recent, but I know it's not just recent as in last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, just met an incredible woman.
How'd you guys meet?
We, so we actually met through friends of ours. So, during COVID, I was in South Africa. She was living in London. She's an interior designer. She was living in London and she was actually living with friends of mine that I was in school with.
Hmm.
Um, and they kept telling her that she reminds them of me, which was so like random. She
Yeah, it's
would
weird.
do things and say things, and they would be like, "The only other person we associate that with is like Ashton." Um, and this would keep happening, and she was going through like a huge divorce during that time as well, and
Mm.
she was kind of going through the whole separation process, and she was just like, "Who the hell is this Ashton guy? Like, I'm hearing so much about him." My friend Adam wouldn't give Sarah my contact details because he was like, "You're too good for him," and so like he was kind of being this gatekeeper. And eventually she just took matters into her own hands and she reached out to me. And, I had
Wow.
spoken to Adam a couple of weeks before that to say, like, the minute I can get out of South Africa, I'm going back to the States. I just want to travel. I think there's more there for me than there is back home. And she was doing the same. She was moving from London back to the States. So her way of sort of like reaching out was like, "Hey, I'm living with Adam and Roxy. They've mentioned that you're moving back to the States. Like, let me know if you need anything." And that just progressed into us chatting every day. We would start like getting on Zoom calls and just really getting to know each other.
Cool.
Um, I was going through a transition in my life at the time. She was too, and we were kind of just supporting each other both through that. And what was really great about it is like all my other relationships would start on the physical front, and then it would be like, well, is there more here that we can expand on? But this time it started in the opposite manner because we were in two different countries. We couldn't be in person with each other. And it really allowed us to like talk and get to know each other on a different level before anything physical. And as soon as I could get out of the States, I kind of met her here in the States where she was. And it was weird. Like we always joke about it. We didn't really know what was going to happen. Um, I was like, well, I could be here for 2 weeks. Like maybe it's 3 weeks, maybe it's a couple of days because you don't know. You got to feel things out. And I
Yeah.
ended up moving in with her from day one for like the 6 months that I was allowed in the States. And I was 6 months out, and then I'd come 6 months back in. So I kind of like
Wow.
didn't move out from our first meeting. Um, yeah, so that's how it all started.
Crazy. It seems like a lot of people met people during the pandemic and that way too, which I find that so when I met my wife, this was nearly 20 years ago, we met through a friend and we both had different beliefs and not to say that it is the right way, but it was our right way. We didn't want to when we met, we didn't want to get physical. We didn't want to have sex until we got married and not to say that like hey we just started dating last week and you know we're gonna wait to have sex until we get married, not that we were that serious from the get-go even though we kind of were. I told her I loved her after 3 weeks, which is absolutely insane, almost 20 years ago. And that's the first girl I had ever said. I'm a little passionate guy, but at the same time that's the first person I had said I love you to. And so we were on the same level though, as far as we don't want to have sex until we find that person and until we get married, which I proposed at 11 months and that we were engaged for almost 2 years. So we waited 3 years, nearly, not all the way. And that was really difficult. So with that, I have found that not only in our relationship, but also other relationships, that those who abstain from that physical and develop that emotional in the beginning just have a longer lasting, more fulfilling relationship. So it seems like a lot of people in the pandemic that they were forced to do that, which is a good thing,
Yeah,
which is
I believe
amazing.
so too. It just
Yeah.
if I look at all my past relationships, they didn't work out, obviously
Mm,
for many different reasons, but this was the first one that was done very differently. And it really did work out because, I can honestly say that I connect with this individual on a much deeper level than just the physical and the intimate. And I
mm,
just feel like it created the perfect foundation. So
I
I'm
love
happy
it.
to hear that it's been other people that bear the fruits of that sort of approach as well.
Yes, sir. So do you guys want kids or anything like that?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. We are in that stage of our life where that's the next step.
It's a
Um,
big one.
it is, and I'm
Yeah.
scared shitless about it if I'm honest.
Of
And
course. You should
on
be.
yeah, and on the topic of it as well, it's the whole conversation around kids has driven a lot more of my personal development journey as well. There were still these behaviors that would be coming through me, and I was like, when I've got kids, like I don't want to act like this and I don't want to behave like this. So it's really driven me to like
Mm,
work on so much more within my own life so that when I do have kids, I'm the best version of myself to help
yeah.
condition them the best way that I can. So it's been a big driver of just continuing to be better and question a lot more things in my
Yeah.
life and upbringing. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a catalyst for me too. So back in 2014, I had opened a gym with a partner and things were going good there. I was working towards getting at the time my real estate license and I had this online marketing slash training company. So I was doing a lot, but I was also pursuing professional golf. And then me and my wife had a discussion, which is, hey, we've been married for 7 years now. We should probably have some kids. And it's like, oh yeah, we should do that. And so we just that thought alone got me to go, okay, I mean, pretty much what you're doing right now. I need to one, make more money. That's number one. And so professional golf was then going to get put on the wayside so I can get a little bit more serious about business because I wasn't going to be a journeyman doing this for my whole life. But also the idea of wanting to be my best for my future kids. I've always been so motivated to be the best dad that I could be, primarily, and I'm super grateful for this. My dad he's a good guy, and I love my dad, and I have a good relationship with my dad now. But when I was younger, he was an alcoholic for decades. And I always just wanted my dad to be present, not just like physically present, which sometimes he was, but I wanted him to be spiritually and emotionally present. So same way that you described parts of how you were raised. You know, you're a man and you don't cry, you don't show your emotions. My dad was similar, and now my dad was an incredible person. My dad's still an incredible person. I love my dad so much, but he didn't connect with me on that emotional level, and he just thought being in my presence was enough at times, and it really wasn't. And so for me, I just longed for that relationship with my dad. I wanted to be close to him. I wanted to get to know him. I wanted to ask him questions. I wanted him to be there, and for that reason, I never got that. But my mom did. My mom was there. My mom loved me, and she catered to pretty much my every need. So she was kind of like a helicopter mom, but in the best of ways. And so for that reason, I didn't crave that relationship. And my mom is also an incredible person, but she was so there that I'm like, it's cool. Like, stop, leave me alone. But my dad, I'm like, I want you, dad. But my dad just never gave that to me. So what it did though, it cultivated an emotion in me, which is mainly good, some bad, that I just want to be the best dad that I can possibly be. And so with that, it seems like you have that same zeal. I can get down on myself for not being a perfect dad, because I have learned now, having an 8-year old and a 6-year old and them being my world, as in like when my daughter was born, 2016, uh, I had waited basically, I would say debatably 15 years, because I knew when I was 2018, I was 18 years old, 2021, that I wanted kids and I wanted a girl. I don't know why, but I was going to wait. And so to have a little girl, there was so much emotion that was put into that. And it was the most incredible thing. And kids are the most incredible thing ever. It's another level of love. I think it's the closest love that we can understand on this planet, in the same way that God and his love towards us is just our love towards our kids. And so with having a little girl, it was so amazing. But if I'm not doing things perfectly, I get down on myself. And I think with that, I've learned that you just can't be a perfect parent. Especially as they get older, they learn how to talk back. They learn how to do things they should not be doing. And some of it is like you and your personality. Like, I'm anal, like straight up. I'm a little bit of a control freak. Like, I'm a perfectionist. Got that from my dad. I like things straight, and I like my mouth straight. I like this. I like that. I like things dialed in. Look at the pictures on the wall. They're perfect. I like things put together. And I've had to learn how to let go of a lot of that, because with kids, they're crazy messy. And then
Yeah.
there's other things, behavioral things that they do that you're like, come on, like what's going on here? So it is the most rewarding, most challenging, most beautiful, most difficult thing ever. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I resonate so much with what you said, and
Mm.
just at the end there, I sort of thought about this thing of like, the more you try and be a better person, and the more you try and find that authentic person of who you are, it's like at some point you just got to be like, well, this is me, and this is my personality, and that's a part of me that I'm going to embrace. But then there's like, which parts do I need to work on, and which parts are not serving me, or like serving our family and relationship. And I think that's sort of where I am right now as well. It's like, okay, dude, you've done the work. Like,
Mhm.
you know what's what's favorable, what's positive, what you've got to keep working on. But it's at that point where it's like, if you just keep striving to be perfect, and whatever that perception is, you'll never get to the point where you feel ready. And that's the one thing that everybody says to me about kids, is you never feel ready. Um,
Mhm.
and I get that, but I just wanted to be in a place where I felt a little bit more ready, to sort of just bring kids up favorably, as favorable as
Yeah.
I could.
I would disagree with that a little bit. Yeah, I was ready. I was so ready. And not to say I was perfect, because I wasn't, but I was so ready. I was not the stereotypical guy that was like, I wanted a boy, and I wanted to let my wife do all the work, and oh, we're having a kid. Okay, wow, crazy. This is cool. Like, I was just so, even probably more ready than my wife, just so eager and so excited and so pumped. It is literally the most incredible thing. It is. I'm not sure that it gets better. I mean, when I think of, I was on a podcast weeks ago, and it was an entrepreneurs podcast, and being that I started and founded about 12 plus companies and had a lot of success there, and also a lot of failures. She was asking me, so what is the one thing that you would say has been the most fulfilling, most rewarding, most successful thing you've ever done? And I just business doesn't come to mind. It's my kids. It's just my kids. It's the most amazing thing ever to think that these children, they come from you. And that's why I'm so passionate about legacy. And I get to instill that legacy in them, hopefully an impactful, good legacy, which then they can carry on and give to people. It's just such an incredible thing. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
What does that term mean to you?
Legacy?
Legacy, like when you think of like, legacy, and because I know that's a big part of, like you said, what you are working on, but also helping other people work on as well. So like when you say that, like what does that mean? What's the perfect picture for you around that word and the intent behind that?
Yeah. So I I would say that it's very uncommon for a 41-year-old man to be talking about legacy, but I've been given a second chance at life, and I'm so grateful for that second chance. So prior to July 15th, 2001, I was one way, and it was very selfish and it was very prideful, and I had been arrested 5+ times for trespassing, for drugs, for some of the things that you were involved in as far as like partying, all that good stuff. And I just lived a very reckless life. Those first 18 years of life, not to say it was the fault of my parents, but I moved to 20 plus cities. I went to 25 different schools plus. I had been expelled from schools. I had been suspended pretty much once to 3 times a year, every year that I was in school for fighting, misconduct. And I was the student that teachers hated. It's like, oh my goodness, like this is a troubled child. And I was destined for death. I mean, honestly, I was just headed nowhere. Like you, I'm 100%. I'm all in. So if I'm gonna do it, like let's get it. You and me together back in the day, like no, we'd be dead. Not good. Not good at all. So
Yeah.
I think with that, God transformed my life, July 15th, 2001, and there's a bigger story to that. But after my life changed, I really feel I have a deep, rich sense of this second life. And I'm so grateful. I mean, it's been almost 24 years now. And so with that, I've lived differently. And a part of that, I think that people want to live their best life. You use that term, best life, and I love that term. They want to live their best life and they want to accomplish in this life and they want success. And when they're younger, it's easier to feel those emotions and do something about it. But then you fail, and then you fail, and then you fail. And then at some point you just kind of give up and you're like, well, this is just my life now. Like, I'm just I mean, I guess it's good, or maybe it's not good, but they lose that zeal and they lose that passion. And I think something taking a step back, being a self reflective person, saying, okay, if you don't have passion for life, what is that? And I firmly believe it's your calling and mission. Like, what are you called to do? What is your mission in life? And if you knew that, like if you knew why you were here, you would probably wake up different. And so a part of legacy is just that, knowing your passion, knowing your calling. So I wrote a book called Carpe Now, and in Carpe Now, it's about discovering the authentic you. And in discovering the authentic you can then live your best life. So the way that I look at that book, and that book was a bestseller and it did really well, and I'm super pumped about that. But it was a small piece of what it is to live a life building a legacy, because that carpe mentality, or that mentality that you have to seize your day, to seize the moment this very second. So carpe now, seize the moment this very second, is something that is going to help you build an impactful legacy. But when you take a step back, you go, whoa, there's more involved here. Like this thing called life, I haven't figured it out, but I'm a student of life. And, right now I'm currently working towards this long process of getting my doctorate in philosophy and history. And I think one of the reasons that I love that, I'm just doing it for fun, is because I love to study the nature of people and I love to study history. And so I'm so intrigued by that because I am this earth student. I'm trying to figure things out. So this book that I just finished about a month ago, it's working through editing right now. It's called Legacy Blueprint. It's about building a blueprint for your legacy. And not to say it's going to be easy, and not to say that it looks the same for each person, but to say when you take a step back and if you look at your life and you say, okay, I've been given right now, that's all I'm guaranteed. When we're done with this podcast, I could leave my studio, someone hits me with a car, and I'm dead. I don't want that. I don't want to die. I know you don't want to die either. But the reality is, I probably will have more time than that. And so, whatever time I've been given, I want to implement good, authentic habits in my life. I want to implement these traits, which will then carry on a legacy that goes beyond financial wealth. I mean, money is one thing. And I know we in America and around the world, you say, you're successful right away. Instantly, you go, oh man, that guy's got to be rich. He's got a nice car. He's got a nice house. But that's not fair, because there's a lot of people that I know without a doubt died poor, and they were extremely successful. I can think of historical people that we remember from thousands of years ago, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years ago, and they were poor. So what kind of legacy do you want to leave? Is it going to be wealth? Is it going to be finances? Or is it going to be more than that? So I want to leave something that goes beyond those things, the material, something like kindness, something like love, generosity, paying it forward, contentment, happiness. Like, why is it that us humans, we sit in this place where we achieve, and it's still at some place inside us, we're like, man, I'm just not content. I just don't feel like I've arrived. Like, even me, like, I've been able to accomplish a lot, and I'm not saying that, like, oh, look at me, like, so great. But there's still days and times that I'm like, just not content, not happy. I haven't arrived. And it's like, whoa, like, why can't we arrive now, today, and live in the moment and enjoy today? The fact that we are all building a legacy, like, there's no way around it. You're going to impact people, even if you have kids or not. You're going to impact people, and it goes beyond your kids. So you're going to impact your community. You're going to impact your parents, your friends, people that you encounter, unless you are a hermit and you live in a closet, which no one does. And maybe some people do, and God forbid. But the reality is we're all going to leave a legacy. And what is that going to be? And so, yes, I'm immensely passionate about, because we're all going to leave a legacy. And I think if we just implemented some of these traits into our life, and we identified what it takes to leave a legacy that is impactful, that will be here after we're gone. Like, how cool is that? Like, after I'm gone, that my kids, my great grandkids, my great great grandkids will then remember and hopefully know Jake. And it's like, oh, my grandpa, he did some cool things. Like, when I cross the finish line, like when I'm on my death day and I die, I want it to be like, whoa, Jake did it. Like, he tried his best. A lot of mistakes, but at the same time, like, he did everything he could to improve humanity, to improve his family, to do, it's super cliche, which is, this concept of love. But there's so much hate, and there's so much fear, and there's so much doubt. And I feel called to implement encouragement and light into people. It's the same way that I put together this podcast. I wanted to put together a podcast that when people listen, they walk away and go, I'm inspired. I'm fired up. I'm pumped. Let's go. Not a podcast that would, I'm not saying that there are podcasts out there that bring people down, but I'm not going to point any fingers. But yeah, so you kind of got the full answer there. So.
And I love it, man. Just something I thought about when you were talking is our perception of what success is, again, is very skewed by so many things, especially just, social media and these standards that are sort of built for us. And it's something I'm working on a lot more. And my therapist sort of challenged me on it the other day. It's like, dude, you place your worth and your value on things that don't really matter that much. And it's like you were saying, I place my value and my success on like how successful I'm in business, like how much money I can earn, how much security I can have for my family. But there's all these other things that should really be where you place your value as a human being on. Like you said, how how kind can you be, or like what are these other traits in you that you can measure your success on, that is not just fiscal, or it's not just like the picture that society expects of a 35-year-old male kind of thing, because we are all different. And I love what you were saying about authenticity, because it really is like we live in this world that is just so distracting, and it's easy for us to actually just be a spectator in our own lives and our own bodies, because we are actually so distracted, so controlled, like our attention is just pulled in so many different directions. It's like we move further and further away from like who we are inside.
Mm.
And it's scary, because you just look at how many hours a day people are scrolling on their phones, and you're literally giving your attention and your energy, you're opening yourself up to be influenced, and to have your own authenticity changed and challenged. And it's hard. It's hard to sort of step back from. And it's a lot of like the work that I've had to done and that I'm passionate about too, is just helping people really find their authentic self, and allowing people to
I love that.
explore what is their value, like what is their value system, but authentically, what is their value system, like what really matters to you, not what you've been told should matter to you. Because again, going back to that example I used earlier of like outcomes, habits, emotions, and beliefs, like you got to do work on the belief system, and you got to be so happy and grounded in your own belief system, because then you're going to foster emotions from a standpoint where it's coming from your authentic self.
Mm.
That's going to then encourage the behaviors and the habits that are aligned with who you are,
Mhm.
and it's going to give you the outcomes that you actually need or want in life. Um, yeah. So I love where you're going with that.
Mm.
And I think it's kind of been a through topic of this is just really authenticity.
Mm.
Um, but I think a lot needs to be said about sort of what we're exposed to, how we live, and like what really matters to us that isn't
Mm.
conditioned in us. And
Yeah.
that's a hard thing to sort of uncover or understand.
Yeah, you and me, I think that's why we align so much is when you wrote your book, like I find most people when they write a book, it's very introspective and you have to dive in deep. And so for me, writing my first book, it was the same way where I'm like, okay, like what am I going to write a book about? Like I made the decision first, I'm going to write a book. And then I said, what am I going to write a book about? And someone suggested, well, maybe write something about like maybe brokered record conversations or topics you have in your life. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, people always compliment and talk about my energy. Like, you are you on crack? Like, what's going on? So I'm like, maybe I should write a book about energy. Nah, that's not it. And so I kind of went down this rabbit hole. And I think fundamentally, why is it that I meet people or other people, but I'm just specifically speaking about me. And this is why, again, I think you and me align. Why is it that I meet people that are gang members, ex gang members, badass dudes that have tattoos, and within 30 minutes they've opened up and they're shedding tears with me, and maybe I'm shedding tears too. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, I just met you, bro. I'm just telling you something that I've not really ever told anyone, man. And they're getting emotional. I'm like, whoa, I've had countless conversations like this. Why? And I think it's only because, and it comes across as arrogant, but I don't mean it to be, as in, I try to give people my authentic self. I am energetic, I'm goofy, and I do things that the perfect man would not do. Because the refined man wouldn't act like that. He wouldn't do this. He wouldn't do that. I am good at one thing for sure: being me. And so, if you like it, great. We're gonna connect. And I don't want to step on anyone's toes. We just won't associate if you don't like it. If you like it, then we're going to get along because I am going to be me. And I would just hope that other people would also be themselves. But you're right. It's discovering the authentic you. Like there are people who read my book and said, Jake said this is not a Christian book. Yet he talks a lot about his Christian faith. Yeah, absolutely. Like I wrote the book to be a memoir and use basically examples from my life to illustrate or build this thing of what it takes to be your authentic self. And I'm not saying your authentic self is that. I'm just saying that's what it took for me. So in order for me to be authentic, I have to completely expose my heart and I have to lay it all out there. be fully transparent, the bad, the good, the ugly, all of it, and be like, this is me. And this is what it took for me to discover my authentic self, which is still an ongoing process. Once you discover it, you don't just keep it and it's there forever. Like you can lose it. And we can be, I always say that in 6 months from now, if I took a different path, I could be, I could be a different person. I could be the wrong kind of person. I could be a bad person if I took a different path. But I am trying to stay on this straight and narrow path. So with that, I think you're so right is finding and discovering your authentic self. If you do, it's only going to allow you to feel comfortable in your own skin. You're going to walk different, you're going to talk different, you're going to act different, and you're going to live a quality life.
The story you were sort of saying is like, you meet these people who are so hardened on the outside, and within a couple of minutes, they just like open themselves up and they're pouring themselves out to you. And it's because guys like you and I that are like going on this deep introspective journey, we're giving other men and other people permission to do the same thing. And that's the first thing that came into my mind when you told me that story. I was like, yeah, I'm not surprised, because you're giving this guy permission. This gang member who's hardened himself, that's been this alpha male, who's also grown up like we have, been told that this is our place and this is our job as men in the world. And he hasn't been given the permission to actually just be emotional and explore those emotions. And I think that's where, the likes of you and I would hope would just create more impact, and conversations like
Mm,
this would just give people more permission to feel. We can't change
mm,
anything without just feeling what we're feeling. And I think it's an overarching problem in not just men, but everybody that's struggling with things in their life, is instead of feeling and bringing awareness to these emotions that are coming up, people sweep them under the carpet and don't get inquisitive about where they're coming from or what's driving those feelings and emotions. And that's when you just build up all this like subconscious baggage
tension.
that starts seeping into your life and your behaviors. And that's where things start breaking around you. And I think it's a beautiful thing to like just sit in front of somebody and you show them just one level of authenticity, or you open up just slightly to them, and automatically you're just giving them that permission. And that's when they're just going to offload on you. And you're like, yep, you needed that, man.
Mm-hmm,
You just needed a good cry. You just needed someone to talk to.
mm-hmm.
You just needed to be told that it's okay to not be the strong man that you've been told you need to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, and a lot of these people that I have met that I've had these experiences with, we didn't keep up on a relationship. Like that was literally it. Like we had a one-shot encounter. Some of these people I have become good friends with in time. We've maintained this relationship, but the majority of them, it's just like a one-off. And so in my mind, they're still there, and my heart and my prayers go out to them. But then in the other instance, I would hope on their side that there was a like you said, a conversation that hopefully moved them in a different direction,
Oh yeah.
which is to be more open. So so if we could, I know you're strapped for time, and I know that you're a busy guy, so I respect that. So wrapping up, what is one thing that you would like to say to the audience that could give them a practical tip or tool or hack to say, hey, you do this, this will take you down the path to success in regards to what we've been talking about the whole time?
I think it's sort of just expanding on what I've said, and I think it's been a theme of the conversation, and it's something I use a lot with my fitness and like wellness and health clients. Um, it's bringing awareness to like what you're feeling in the moment, and not just being reactive to the things that you're feeling. And if you think about it sort of on a nutritional standpoint, like people get emotional, they get sad, they want to eat, they get stressed, they want to eat. And these are all like knee jerk reactions to feelings that we're feeling inside. And we've got this false coping mechanism to just numb that feeling in the moment. But the feeling never goes away. The problem never goes away. You might be 6 pints of ice cream down. You still have that emotion. You still have that feeling, right? And it's the same with everything else in your life. The biggest thing I had to take responsibility of after the show, because I went through this phase after the show of like pointing the finger and like, oh, but that person said that to me, or that person did that, and that's why I behaved like that. And you've got to stop yourself and stop pointing the finger outward, and just look within and understand is there something that I can do work on in myself that would have allowed me to respond in a more favorable manner or in a less triggered manner? And it's for me, it's the biggest problem in a lot of people. And I don't have data to support that, but I see it in a lot of people is that we're very triggered, we very blaming of other people, and it's like it's his fault that I'm where I'm at, or he did this, that's why I did that. It's not anybody's fault. The number one thing that we've got control over is our internal environment. We have to do the
Mhm.
work to be less triggered, to be less sparked by other people, because other people are not going away. Environment is not going to coddle us so that we can be happy and go lucky in our life. And it's a big thing that I had to take full responsibility of. If I was
Mm.
more mentally and emotionally stable, nothing that was said to me on Below Deck or in life would take the power away from me and my emotions and cause me to act out. So, and again, it starts with awareness. Take an inquisitive inquiry, take an inquisitive approach. Number one, to yourself. So when you're feeling things, don't demonize feelings. Don't like, oh, it's a bit icky or uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to deal with this. Embrace it. Sit, like spend some time in that space, spend some time in that
Mm.
emotion. And the most practical thing that I can offer people is in those emotional times or in those feelings of feeling a certain way, ask yourself why 5 times. It might not
Mm.
even take all 5 times, but you're going to feel sadness as the surface level feeling, or you might feel anger as the surface level feeling. But then if you step back, and it doesn't have to be immediately in the moment, but something's going to happen that's going to cause you to question the scenario. When you're angry at surface level, ask yourself, okay, why did you get angry? And it's like, oh, well, he said that. And then you say, okay, but why did him saying that make me angry? That's your
Mm.
second level down. And then it's like, oh, well, my dad used to say stuff like that to me. Now we're getting somewhere, right? Then you go
Mm.
four times down and like, okay, but why did your dad saying that to you trigger you? And then it's like,
Mm.
well, in your case, well, I just wanted to be loved and accepted and seen by my dad. And then now you're getting down to the root cause of like what really drove that outburst? What's really driving that emotion? And once you identify that core reason, and maybe you go ask why one more time, now you're getting down to where the work needs to be done. Because now the problem is not what this guy said to you. The problem is that you've never healed your wounds and you've never done the work that you need to really heal yourself of your past traumas. But we all here reacting to society, blaming everybody else for the way that we feel. But we've got to take responsibility. We've got to do the work within ourselves to understand what's driving our feelings, what's driving our emotions. Um, does that make sense?
I love it. I mean, what a grand finale. 5 whys deep. I don't know if you've coined that or labeled it, but yeah, that's good. That's really good. I think in my book Carpe Now, the first before we get into the first chapter, I talk about presence and what's your presence barometer. And it's basically that. Let's take a journey, but in order for you to take a journey to chisel away at this new you, you have to discover where you're at right now, which is to be present in the moment. And you've basically said the same thing, but I love the 5 whys deep. That's good.
Yeah. The other thing I
It's really
wanted to
good.
say is, you have
Hmm.
empathetic inquiry for yourself. So like start getting inquisitive about why you're feeling a certain way. And like my personal example that everybody knows of is like Kate said something to me and it triggered me and I acted
Mm.
and I outburst. It wasn't like, it's not about what Kate said. It's about something that I haven't dealt with in my past that caused me to act like that. Right.
Mm.
But you've also got to have empathetic inquiry for other people, right? And I think this is where you can move towards a society that is less judgmental, and more supportive of personal growth. Because we do live in a cancel society, and like you do something wrong, and people are like, "How dare he? He's cancelled. Like he needs to take
Done.
responsibility." But there's not enough people going, why did he behave that way? Like,
Mm.
what's going on? Like, where does he need help and support? My wife says empathy is a superpower. And I truly, truly, truly believe that because everybody has their own emotional baggage and emotional trauma that they're dealing with. And yes, it's your responsibility to deal with that so that you can be behave more favorably in society. But I think there's another responsibility on the rest of us to stop being so damn judgmental. Like, be a little bit
Mm.
more empathetic, have that empathetic inquiry, and give somebody grace. Obviously, to a certain extent, right? It's a balancing act, but just ask more questions, be inquisitive, because you never know what other people are going through, and you never know what traumas that they're just trying to deal with or that they're coping with themselves.
Mm. Empathy, superpower. So true. Well, then I guess I'm a superhero because I find myself in tears literally almost every day over people and the pain that they experience. It sounds super corny and it's a little odd to even say. And I think I got it from my dad, just that Cuban zeal, that Cuban passion that I have. But man, people are in so much pain and it hurts. It hurts to see it. And I want to jump in and help. In some cases you can, some cases you can't. But I think you're right, man. People are jumping the gun, judging people these days, and without. I had someone ask me a question yesterday, which was a really difficult question. I know we're limited on time here, but he had said, "Hey, so I'm gay and I'm a Christian, and what are your thoughts on that?" And so, for a Christian to be asked that, I think you would probably know the answer. But instead of dealing with it with saying like, "Well, you're gay, that's wrong," it was more, I honestly, here's my feelings, here's my thoughts, here's what I believe the Christian faith says about that. But at the end of the day, I think that you are loved by God and that God wants to have a relationship with you, and that I don't fully understand your feelings because I'm not gay. And because I'm not gay, I don't know what it's like to have feelings for the opposite sex. And any gay person I've ever talked to, including my brother, they all say the same thing. I was born this way. At 4, 5, 6 years old, I have had these feelings. I don't, I don't understand that. Can I try to sit here and explain it? Yeah, but I don't think it would do it justice to the person who's sharing their feelings with me. So for me, it was just like, do I hear you? Like, this is what the Christian faith says. This is what I believe. But I hear you. I love you, man. I mean, if you just want to talk to me, let's talk, and maybe we can come to a place together. But I mean, that's his journey. And so what I typically offer people is an ear and words of encouragement if I can,
Yeah.
because man, I haven't figured it all out, especially that one. So
And although there's these people and these group, like there's people, there's groups, there's organizations that claim to have the answer and they claim to have it all figured out, and we're all just trying to figure everything out. And
I'm right there with you, man.
we all
I'm right
feel
there with you.
unjust by our opinion or our reason for thinking certain ways. But in the bigger scheme of things, neither of us really know. Nobody has the finite answers. And, the best thing that we can do for each other as society, like we've just said, is just be more open, like just see people, try be more understanding than closed
Yeah,
off. Um,
I agree.
yeah. Well, I
I
appreciate
agree.
you having me, man. It's been cool to chat. I feel like there's so many more things we can talk about. And
Oh my goodness, I'm definitely going to get you back on the show. I mean, I love having a conversation with someone like you who is transparent and authentic. And I appreciate you, my friend.
yeah.
I love you. And we'll definitely do this again sometime soon.
Appreciate you too, man. Thanks, Jake. And yeah, maybe we do a
Yep.
retreat or we do something together.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I'm all about that. Actually, when you were talking, especially your heart with authenticity, I'm like, we definitely have to get that dialed in.
Yeah.
So you tell me what you're doing, and then we can coordinate um, how to work together on that. And then maybe if you want to give a shout out how people can reach out to you, that would be good too.
Yeah, look, Instagram's pretty much the place that I'm the most active. My handle is my full name at Ashton Pienaar, Pienaar. A direct message there is always the best way to get in touch. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it, man.